So we're going to get started. I think I saw Sandy go on mute. So Sandy, if I'm wrong, stop me. But for Chairman Carbaugh, thanks for joining us today. You know, in the past, we've done a NAFA State House Day. And when we were planning for that this year with COVID, we just didn't know what was going to be allowed even at the State House or, you know, what was going to be happening at this time. So we've switched to this format, and we thought it'd be a great time to have you on as the second half of session starts to give us your thoughts on the session, how it's been impacted by COVID, what you've got going on with insurance. And as you know, NAFA Indiana has been a big and a strong supporter of your efforts on long-term care. And so we look forward to hearing about that, but also anything we can do as this half moves forward to assist from our membership as well. I think for those of you that don't know, most of you know Representative Carbaugh, but also a insurance professional along with all of us here. So great person to have in the legislature and to work with. So Representative Carbaugh, Chairman Carbaugh of the new Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee, I will hand it over to you. And then if there's questions that come up, I think we'll have some time for questions as well. So thank you for joining us.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate being here, and sorry it isn't in person. As we see some of our other Republican-run states dropping their mask mandates and such, we're working on that same program here in Indiana, and hopefully next time we'll be together in person. It is a very different session, different for the committee, being two committees into one. The Senate has had that situation for quite a while where financial institutions and insurance were together. When our chairman of financial institutions retired, I lobbied the new speaker pretty hard about let's merge the committees, and it's a good thing. I think there was about 2 or 3 bills total that were financial institutions related. So it really made sense to put the two committees together. And so from the perspective of how session's going, say for a little bit of drama here a couple weeks ago, if you guys read the paper, if you read Indy Star, understand that fake news is a real thing and it's an inaccurate account of the events that happened in the back of the chamber. Ironically, something called the cheat sheet got it right. So talk to somebody who maybe gets Abdul's cheat sheet, because that's the appropriate account of that situation. Outside of that, it's really actually been kind of business as usual. The House got started a little slower than the Senate. The Senate kind of took off with committees right away. We took a more cautious approach, and maybe that's why the Senate, with half the members, passed more bills than the House in the first half. I don't know. Do you know those numbers, John? I think is that 179 bills are passed out of the Senate, something.
I think that's right, because total was like about 300 or something like that.
I know that our ever discerning senators had more than us. So anyway, we've got our work cut out for us, fixing some of those things, and I'm sure there's a few things that are left undone that we sent over to the Senate. So we're not perfect in the House, but we love that rivalry anyway. As far as insurance issues are concerned, I had a big omnibus bill. It's really common for the chairman, since I've been elected, to have an omnibus various insurance matters bill. What's kind of interesting about that is that normally we call it the department bill. The Department of Insurance will have various things that we need to adopt for accreditation. And this year, I got in touch with the department towards the end of 2020, and they said, well, we got nothing for you. So this bill is really just some of the things that I wanted to work on, some that have been brought to us by constituents and friends in the industry and neighbors. And then also good folks like John and others that have had some industry things to fix. We've got those in that bill. So I'm looking off to the side because I got my iPad up with my notes from that bill. There's so many things. We deal with the long-term care partnership issue that I know Mr. Barnhouse is very excited to hear where we're at with that. And he's been great throughout the process and in helping with that. I'll save that for last. A couple of things you'll be interested in, I'm sure, as insurance professionals. My bill will speed up the process for medical records to come in when we're doing life insurance and disability insurance cases are being underwritten. We're cutting it back to 30 days now. There's some push to say that medical records in 30 days, but they can request an extension for 30 days. And that may make it in the Senate. That kind of came last second in the first half. To me, as something that the medical community wanted to do, and I said no. Get it in 30 days. We got medical records that are electronic. It should not be a big deal. So if they do the appeal process, I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, does that mirror a federal statute or something of that nature?
That's right. What they had said is under HIPAA, they can request an amount of time up to 30 days to fulfill the request. And so that's where that came from.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see. It may be a 30 with a 30 extension request option. That would still be better than the current. And then there's also a fine of $5,000 if they don't comply. So hopefully we'll give them a little stick to avoid there. We're changing some things with some property and casualty stuff that you can be notified or that you notified by mail as opposed to provided notices. And won't dwell on some of those things. Really a lot of just cleanup type stuff. We are adopting a rebating model law that NCOIL passed, and just for refresher, NCOIL is the National Council of Insurance Legislators. So legislators from states all across the country, all states are members, gather together typically up to 3 times a year to discuss model acts that we can then take back to our states and consider for law. So we don't pass laws at NCOIL, but I don't want to understate the importance of an organization like that, where we get a lot of the laws that we pass here in the state of Indiana from NCOIL. And conversely, we've been able to take some of the laws we've passed in Indiana and turn them into model bills for the nation. And we saw that with Representative Lehman's Uber bill a few years ago, and how the insurance works with Uber when you're driving it and riding in it, and who's protected and whose insurance carries it. That was all developed by Representative Lehman, and then he took that to NCOIL to make a model law. I did that with short-term health insurance, the expansion of that, and hopefully with the new administration we'll keep that expanded. So we'll see how that goes. And then lastly, the one that we want to maybe spend some time on is the long-term care partnership program. So as many of you know, the Indiana Long-Term Care Partnership Program was originally designed to incentivize Hoosiers to self-insure at least a majority or a big portion of their risk for long-term care expenses. And because of the parameters of that partnership program, those policies are very unaffordable, even in their most basic designs. And the country has really moved on to what's called the Deficit Reduction Act partnership plan. And that was passed several years ago. A lot of states have taken hold of it. The 4 original partnership states, which we're a part of, none of us have moved to the Deficit Reduction Act. One of the things about the Deficit Reduction Act plan is that it does not provide an option for total asset protection. And the concern with switching from the 4 states is, if we switch, well, can we grandfather in our old contracts? Well, we can by state law. We definitely can grandfather those contracts and say, if you had total asset protection, you're going to have total asset protection. But then it becomes who pays. So the big question that we're trying to get answers for, and I'm developing a contingency if we don't get answers from the feds, because we don't expect them to act fast on anything anymore. But the question we need to know is that if we grandfather and down the road somebody goes on to Medicaid after their benefit has exhausted itself and they have total asset protection, but now we're a DRA state in the future, will the feds, will CMS honor their match for the Medicaid expenses of that person who has been grandfathered? There's some concern by some that, and that's, the Health Underwriters Association, I think, has the biggest concern, that we may potentially lose the match. Well, I believe they pay upwards of 68, 70% of the cost of the Medicaid, the nursing home costs for that Medicaid patient. So if we lose that match, that would then become the state's responsibility. The constituent is taken out of it. They're protected, but the taxpayer may not be protected in that case. And so, while I would like to think that we would have a federal government that would understand what happened and would do the right thing. We don't have 100% assurance as of today. We are trying to get some guidance from CMS before we pass anything. But what I may be looking to do here in the second half, because Senator Walker actually sent a bill over to us that looks similar to the piece in my various insurance matters bill that's long-term care related. What we may be looking to do is pass something that sets up kind of a series of changes. So in other words, ideally, I don't know if it can happen, but ideally we could keep our Indiana partnership program and add the DRA on top of it and keep them both active. I don't know that that's realistic, but we could put into law a series of requests, make that request. If denied, okay, then make the next request that we can grandfather, be guaranteed we get a match, but move to DRA. And so I need to develop that a little bit. I'm kind of holding off until we hopefully hear something back that's more definitive to where we don't have to have all these contingencies, but that's really what I'm looking at when it comes to moving forward with this change that's been needed for a while, and looking forward to pursuing that. As far as the rest of the session, it's looked different for us in the House because we're not in our chamber. We're at the Indiana Government Center South, or as I call it, the Fake House. So we have the State House and the Fake House, and we meet there. And it's a big conference room. It's like going and getting CE credits at a big conference room. It's kind of boring looking. It's not grandeur like our State House chamber. But the business that we're doing, it feels very similar to any other session. We're having amendments proposed and shot up there and voted up or voted down, and we're moving bills, and we found a way to move a lot of bills. So while a lot's changed, not a lot's changed in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So from that perspective, it's been fairly normal outside of our surroundings and locations. So I don't know if I've talked a lot here, John. If there's anything you want me to touch on specifically, or if I want to take questions, I'm good to go for that.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and I would say, I know for the online format, first off, we've got a comment from Chris Barnhouse, who says he doesn't recognize you without your bow tie.
Not Tuesday. It's not Tuesday. Bow tie Tuesday.
Bow tie Tuesday. So we've got a definitive answer to that now, which is good. The day has been a success. One of the questions is, I think this group would be interested in, we've got a lot of financial advisors and agents, and then some folks are on the health insurance side of things, I should say, but more generally healthcare, the costs associated with that. I know there's been some pharmacy benefit manager bills this year, and then I noticed you had a bill also maybe getting at healthcare ministry care. Just interested in some of your thoughts on what's going on this year with the cost of healthcare, both prescription drugs or otherwise, with general care outside of prescription drugs.
Yeah, that's a good question, and happy to comment on that. The PBM, pharmacy benefit manager bills, are coming over from the Senate, and I'm just now really starting to look at those. I think they sent them to me, which was great. They didn't ask, but I gotta take a look at them. Here, pharmacy benefit managers, they manage the benefits of employer drug plans. And the idea is they negotiate lower costs and save employers and in turn consumers money on the cost of drugs. They're not very regulated. It's hard. They're not an insurance product. So, when we've looked at regulation before, do we put them underneath the Department of Insurance, even though they have nothing at risk? So they're not a risk company. So it's always been very difficult. And then how they make their money is interesting too. Last year when we were dealing with some PBM issues, I got to know an independent PBM owner who used to be a pharmacist, and he helped explain. Of course, I couldn't give that presentation again. I heard it once, but he helped explain how there are 6 different ways that PBMs can potentially make money or pull money out of this system by being this middleman, which I don't begrudge anybody making money. However, when I hear from a drug manufacturer that they've been talked to by pharmacy benefit managers, then they've wanted one of their cheaper versions of a drug on the formulary, the response from the PBM being, well, we'll put that on the formulary, but you got to raise the cost and offer a rebate, because then they keep a piece of that rebate. Now, all of a sudden, you go from managing a pharmacy benefit plan and keeping a piece for filling the benefits to really manipulating the benefit plan to your own advantage is what I fear. Because there's no real regulations on them. There's not a lot of disclosure to them. So, we've tried to start that process of getting more disclosure. But with 6 different ways of making money, it really becomes whack-a-mole, or squeezing a balloon. You limit it over here, that just means everything else comes up on the other side. And so I have to get more comfortable with these bills that are being sent over. There's some MAC pricing, which MAC pricing is the maximum allowed charge for a drug. And it's based on like the last 7 days supply and cost, and there's a whole formula. And the pharmacist will turn in what they want to be reimbursed. The PBM will come back and say, no, the MAC is X, which could be below the cost to the pharmacist. And they're allowed to appeal the MAC price, but they appeal it to the PBM. So guess how many MAC prices get flipped around? Not many, if at all. So there's a bill that's designed to give them kind of a third party, Department of Insurance or otherwise, third party to appeal to. And I guess they've done this in a couple other states. It's held up in court, and some of these big PBMs, there's 3 PBMs that account for about 80 to 90% of the market. It's just dominated by 3. And that'll probably expand to 4 as Anthems gets going, but they're a relatively new one. But the bottom line is the appeal process is something that really is there only in name, and probably they should have somebody to go to. But okay, so if we hammer that down, and we've seen other states, there's been big penalties for these MAC appeals that weren't being done right. So that we get them there, does that mean that, okay, now the fill fees go up, and now the coupons go up, and the prices go up and get reduced, and do we play more games other places? That's my fear. So it doesn't mean it's not worth trying to whack them all, but that's really what we're looking at with those PBM bills. And then as far as healthcare sharing ministries, again, not very regulated. And there's kind of an issue. So under Obamacare, with the mandate being that kind of it's there, but the penalty is 0, it's non-existent. There's less emphasis on this, but the healthcare sharing ministry plans were allowed if they were established prior to, I think it's 1999. And so part of the issue I see in the sharing ministry field is there probably should be some state oversight, not overbearance, but then who does that become? Is that the Attorney General, or is that the Department of Insurance? they would say, well, we're not insurance, and they aren't. They are definitely not an insurance contract. So it really should be the Attorney General. And so that would probably make sense, that it would go to the Attorney General. But then this whole idea of no new innovation essentially is what the Obamacare law put into place, where if you didn't exist before a certain date, then you don't count. I don't like that from an innovation standpoint. I think the sharing ministries concept has a lot of merit, and it gives another opportunity for folks to find a way to cover healthcare costs in a different way. But I also I'm not a believer in no regulation. So we probably need to get some basic oversight in place. That's what I'm really looking to do with that bill and that concept. Whether we do anything yet this year or not, I didn't hear my own bill this year. We ran out of time in the first half. I could always put it in as amendment in committee. I'm not sure if we're ready to do that yet or not, but might be something I concentrate on next year.
Well, thank you for that response. I think the timing of this, I'm going to ask a question that came up, and if it's kind of been answered already, then I apologize. I think it's a slight variation, and this is on long-term care in 1405. And I think you did say this, at this point, 1405 keeps DRA and the Indiana partnership.
Right.
But then this is kind of an end of the day question, and maybe how you work out 261, 1405, do you move both of those bills and just sync the language up? And then if at the end of the day, if you have to make a choice between keeping DRA or keeping the partnership program, is there going to be any language that kind of makes that determination as far as, which one do we keep at the end of the day if we have to make a decision on that?
Well, what I'll say is this. I'm really hoping to hear something from CMS to give us better guidance. The concern is large enough. If we grandfather and the feds don't pay their match down the road, that could cost hundreds of millions of dollars to the state in a worst case scenario. Even best case, it's still probably hundreds of millions potentially down the road if we don't get that match. And so my preference would be to move to DRA and leave behind the partnership, but that's only if we get the match. If we, in the end, if we apply, so it's written as it's written, we want both. If they say we can't have both, okay, then can we have DRA but grandfather and ensure that we're getting our match down the road when those people start needing Medicaid benefits when their plans run out? If the answer is yes, then I want to move to DRA and grandfather the old plan. If the answer is no, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I think the default is we have to stay with Indiana's partnership plan. You don't want to be the cause of hundreds of millions of dollars of debt that pops up out of nowhere, or cost to the Medicaid program, which is already struggling financially because we don't get the match. So that's not going to be a forever unanswered question. At some point, the feds are going to answer the question, whether it's through us sending an email or a formal request to amend our partnership plan. It may take a formal request to amend the partnership plan. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think the budget people would have my head if I just said, no, we got to go DRA and we'll figure out the hundreds of millions of dollars of debt later. I just don't think that's very responsible. So I don't think we'll end up there, but I can't promise that we won't.
Yeah, thank you. That all makes a lot of sense. I'm looking, I don't see any other questions coming from our group. And so I think with that said, we want to thank you for your time today. We appreciate the time today, but also all the part-time you donate to the state of Indiana, right?
Yeah.
To be a part-time legislator. And so appreciate that. And we look forward to being in touch as this goes on, especially with the long-term care. We're obviously happy to engage our membership in any way we can to assist if that becomes needed. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for calling in. And any last words from you, Chairman Carbaugh?
I don't think so. I hope everybody has a great rest of the year. Hopefully 2021 is becoming better than 2020 was.
Yeah, I agree. If it's worse, we're all in for trouble. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you. Thanks all for calling in.
Thank you.